Welcome back to Gen X Countdown, where we dig up the classics that made our childhoods legendary, or at least memorable. And today we're looking at two space-faring ninja-fighting sci-fi cartoons that might have shaped your Saturday mornings. Battle of the Planets and G-Force Guardians of Space. These shows took the original Japanese anime Science Ninja Team Gatchaman and gave it that good old American remix treatment. Very different results. But here's the thing. If you watched these heroes in the early 80s, you probably remember Battle of the Planets with its friendly robot 7 Zark 7. And if you tuned in a bit later in the decade, you were likely cheering on G-Force Guardians of Space. Same source material, but oh boy, were the changes fascinating. Stick around because by the end of this video, you might discover which show really blasted off in your memories, and we'll cover a controversial fact that might blow your space helmet off. Alright, well, let's kick things off with Battle of the Planets, which hit American screens in 1978. This was the first introduction many of us had to the world of Gatchaman, and man did they try to give it that Star Wars vibe. With space battles, daring missions, and a group of heroes in colorful bird-themed costumes, it had everything a sci-fi loving kid could ask for. Except, well, a lot of the darker, more violent scenes from the Japanese original were sliced out. To fill the gaps, they introduced 7 Zark 7, a little robot that monitored everything from his underwater base. This guy spent half the show explaining what the team was up to and reassuring us that everyone was totally fine. Because heaven forbid we see a real consequence, right? But despite these weird edits, Battle of the Planets was still a blast. The action, the team dynamics, and the sheer space epicness made it a cornerstone of our Saturday mornings. Did you know that 7 Zark 7 was created purely to make up for the massive cuts and violent content? The producers were terrified of showing kids anything too intense. And there's a shocker. The American version completely erased the fact that the original villains were eco-terrorists, focusing instead on generic space bad guys. And gotta love the 70s. Now let's jump back to the mid-80s and talk about G-Force Guardians of Space. If Battle of the Planets was the polished, sanitized version, G-Force was like its slightly rebellious younger sibling. This adaptation struck closer to the original Japanese storyline, meaning fewer cutesy edits and no added robots explaining every little damn thing. The animation was the same, but the tone was different. The villains were scarier, the stakes felt higher, and the action didn't pull as many punches. Plus, the team didn't have to stop every 5 minutes to get a pep talk from a robotic babysitter. But let's be real. The voice acting in G-Force was not good. Thanks to budget constraints, some of the dialogue felt like it was recorded during someone's lunch break. And yet there was something authentic about it. You felt like you were getting closer to the real Gatchaman, even if the production quality took a hit. Unlike Battle of the Planets, G-Force kept most of the original plot intact, making it a truer adaptation. And here's a weird one. The rush voice acting was because the producers wanted to save money. Guess even space heroes had to deal with budget cuts. In the end, Battle of the Planets versus G-Force Guardians of Space, it's really the same source material. Two totally different experiences, though. Battle of the Planets gave us a kid-friendly space adventure, while G-Force stayed closer to the original and gave us a taste of the darker, more intense story. Which one did you grow up with? And which version do you think holds up better today? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more nostalgic dives, and remember, whether you had a space robot sidekick or not, the 80s were a wild ride. Stay cool.